In international conference halls and across social media, Yeonmi Park has accumulated tens of millions of views detailing her escape from the North Korean regime. Corroborating individual memories from a highly secretive, dictatorial state presents a strict forensic challenge. There is no free press to confirm specific dates, and independent investigators cannot cross the border to interview witnesses. Looking at satellite imagery of the Korean peninsula at night reveals the scale of this isolation. South Korea is brilliantly illuminated, while the north remains a literal dark zone, physically cut off from the global grid. To evaluate the reality she describes, we have to align personal testimony with independently documented records, separating the subjective experience of one survivor from the verified systemic mechanisms of the state. Yeonmi Park was born in October 1993 in Haesan. This peripheral northern city sits on the Yalu River, directly across from the Chinese border. Life on this border looked very different from Pyongyang. State elites maintained access to specialized stores and reliable electricity near towering monuments, while residents in Haesan navigated a precarious local economy, one defined by strict surveillance and illicit cross-border smuggling. In primary schools across the country, education enforces absolute state devotion. Curriculum analysis shows that over 35% of primary instructional hours are dedicated to ideological subjects, integrating military rhetoric and loyalty to the supreme leadership directly into basic literacy and mathematics. Growing up in a heavily monitored smuggling hub exposed Park to a hyper-monetized environment of bribery and black market commerce, developing a survivalist mentality distinct from the interior farming collectives. Park describes a childhood defined by extreme scarcity. To survive periods where state rations failed entirely, her family relied on her father's illicit trade in metals and smuggled consumer goods in local informal markets. Demographic estimates place the mortality toll of the 1990s famine between 500,000 and over 1 million citizens. During this period, the state-run public distribution system effectively disintegrated, resulting in a severe cliff drop in per capita daily caloric distribution. This diagram breaks down the mechanics of Songbun, the state's socio-political classification system. Every citizen is categorized into core, wavering, or hostile classes based on their family's perceived political loyalty, dictating their housing, education, and career trajectories from birth. To enforce this rigid hierarchy, mandatory neighborhood watch units, known as inmanban, monitor residential compliance. These units conduct unannounced midnight inspections, cataloging unregistered guests and ensuring total surveillance over the lower tiers. With the state actively restricting resources based on inherited political loyalty, citizens in the lower classes were forced into a legal market enterprise simply to eat. State control extends strictly to the information ecosystem. All legal televisions and radios have their tuners hardwired and sealed to official frequencies. Despite severe penalties, extensive surveys confirm that contraband media penetrated the border regions. Modified portable players and smuggled USB drives containing foreign dramas quietly circulated through underground networks in Haesan. Park has publicly testified to witnessing extreme punishments for consuming this media, including public executions in a local stadium specifically for the crime of watching Western films. Independent investigations by the UN Commission of Inquiry confirm the existence of brutal political penal colonies and document public executions for systemic political offenses. However, stadium executions explicitly for viewing Western media in Haesan during that specific timeline lack independent witness corroboration. Discrepancies like this demonstrate how the absolute, verified terror of the state penal system can blur specific memories over time, amplifying the trauma of living under a regime where minor infractions carry lethal generational consequences. The fragile stability of Park's household shattered when state authorities arrested her father for his illegal commercial operations. He was sentenced to a re-education labor facility, stripping the family of their sole income. This chart illustrates survey data from over 30,000 defectors detailing their primary motivations for leaving the country. It reveals that during the 2000s, over 68% of individuals cited acute food insecurity and economic ruin as their direct catalyst for departure. Park's recorded trajectory matches this 68% demographic exactly. Following her father's imprisonment and her sister's sudden disappearance, the remaining family faced immediate destitution, forcing them to look across the river. The northern border spans over 1,400 kilometers. Near Haesan, the Yalu River narrows to under 120 meters. Before the installation of modern thermal cameras and concrete fences, freezing temperatures turned the river into a dangerous, patrol-heavy walkway. Crossing required navigating a shadow economy of underground fixers. Defectors relied on local informants to bribe border guards, arranging brief, timed windows to slip across the ice and link up with Chinese human smugglers on the opposite bank. There is rarely a careful geopolitical strategy behind these departures. It is a panicked, highly vulnerable leap into the dark, entirely dependent on illicit brokers. Surviving the river does not equate to freedom. The Chinese government does not recognize North Korean escapees as refugees, classifying them instead as illegal, undocumented migrants. Under bilateral agreements, Chinese public security forces actively detain and forcibly repatriate escapees back to Pyongyang, where they face interrogation, torture, and internment in political labor camps. This policy of repatriation creates a predatory environment. Human rights organizations estimate that up to 80% of female defectors in Northeast China experience forced marriage or commercial exploitation. Park's mother was sold into a forced marriage, and her father, who later crossed into China, died in hiding and was buried in secret to avoid police detection. Without legal status, escapees rely on an underground railroad organized by humanitarian volunteers and missionaries. This network funnels defectors thousands of miles across mainland China, culminating in a dangerous nocturnal crossing of the Gobi Desert to reach diplomatic refuge in Mongolia. Upon eventual arrival in South Korea, defectors undergo extensive intelligence screening before transferring to the state-run Hanawan Settlement Support Center. Here, a 12-week curriculum attempts to bridge a half-century of technological and societal divergence. Physical safety often gives way to severe culture shock. Sociological data indicates high rates of clinical depression and deep social alienation, as resettled individuals struggle to secure employment and process the trauma of their flight. A rigorous, evidence-based audit of Yeonmi Park's testimony reveals a complex intersection of personal trauma and verifiable history. Her fundamental timeline of extreme poverty, border trafficking, and family devastation accurately mirrors the documented realities of the region. While subjective memories can distort and specific claims sometimes conflict with independent archives, the verified mechanics of the state remain absolute. The documented reality of starvation, forced labor, and mass surveillance proves that the system from which she fled requires no embellishment to be recognized as deeply horrifying.